we've been learning a lot over the last 3 days to help us with agency and action when it comes to water is life. And today we'll be thinking about and seeing and hearing about the effects of war and the threats of war on the planet, entire planet. We'll hear about how we're threatened, the ongoing nuclear threat, what threats that poses for water, especially when waste is leaked in water, and the connection between imperialism, militarism, and environmental destruction. We will learn how conflicts around the world affect water, and especially how it affects places in conflict now. And we'll hear from the Disarm committee about that. After we've had some time thinking about and hearing about the threats of water to the planet, we'll also hear about the threats of water given the climate crisis and what's happening to our waterways, our oceans, and what we might be able to do about that. So we will hear also a little bit about actions we can take. And there'll be poetry today. There's also ending the day with good news in some ways, because we'll hear about how the golden rule and is hopefully having a positive effect on war and the threat to water, so that we can move beyond the nuclear threat that we have now. So welcome, and I hope you choose to close out your day with a little time so that we can shake it up a little bit. And I will be happily hosting some great videos tonight. Some of them will have language that could be objectionable to some people, but we can talk through that. And now we will have our land acknowledgement from Cricket.
Thank you, George Friday. Yes. And if anyone is interested in finding out about the work that George does, George, would you put your email in a chat for anyone that wants to find out more about who you are and the work that you do? And here's George is a member of our board, and she works very deeply with the Advancing Human Rights Committee. And then here is Cricket, who is another advisor to the board, long-term WILPF member, and welcome. You look wonderful. Thank you.
We're here today, virtually, across many areas of Turtle Island, and perhaps even beyond. We acknowledge the land we are on as the territories of the indigenous people. But we know deep in our beings that it's important not only to acknowledge the traditional caretakers of the land settled on, but also defer to and support our indigenous siblings in their movements for self-determination and land back. It is about honoring the past, gratefully recognizing present leaders in the community, and working together in the future with joy and resolve. Further, the Honor Native Land campaign is an assertion that we are all connected to the earth, the water, the air, the cosmos, and each other. Our destinies are intertwined in this moment of change, and we promote and create change that honors all living beings. We as WILPF remember that Indigenous wisdom has taught for thousands of years that relationships with one another, in community, relationships with all nature, are really what brings well-being into life. We honor those teachings as we celebrate and work for peace and justice. Blessed be.
Thank you, Cricket. All right, here we go. Give us a little music to take us into the day.
What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown?
Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I'm going to say that what happens when women take power is really what WILPF is about, right? And many of you in your work talk about feminist peace, and many of you are building that feminist peace with others. We also have the Founding Mothers movement and the Project Enduring Peace that are just part of that. And here is Kelly. How are you, Kelly? We're so excited to see you. We're excited about your work, and I'm going to unmute you and welcome you. And I am going to let you take it away. Thanks. Remove my spotlight. I think you're unmuted. Nope. I thought I unmuted you. You were still. Let's try it on this side. Somebody's working on unmuting me right now. Let me. Ellie? Where are we? Where are we? Unmute.
You can't unmute yourself.
Yeah, there we go. Now, you're ready.
Muted here, so
Yep. I think there's 3 of us trying to unmute you at the same time,
okay,
including you.
we're unmuting each other. Okay,
Thank you for
can you
being
hear me now?
here, Kelly. Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just gonna get my presentation up. And I can share my screen. Oops.
You should have that. Yes, you're co-hosting, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
And just for those, the rest of us, you can take yourselves off. You can go to like speaker view so that we can see Kelly and her slides. That's up in the top corner under view.
Okay. Just about, sorry. Okay. Okay, and you can still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Nuclear power poisons the planet. My name's Kelly Lundeen. I'm so excited to see so many of you here today. I've only been able to see a few of the presentations so far, but I have a question for all of you. This is a women's organization. How many of you believe that children and babies should be born healthy into this world? You can go ahead and raise your hand, or yes, thank you, awesome. How many of you believe that having healthy children born into this world will make it a better world and give us all a better future? Okay, thank you. How many of you would be willing to take one small, easy step to do something towards making that happen today while we're here?
All of us.
Yay! Great. This is my daughter. This is my family, my 3 children. I am of European descent, living in Wisconsin on Anishinaabe land, stolen from the Anishinaabe. A few of them were speaking the other day on Thursday night. We got to hear about the tar sands pipelines, line 3 and line 5. So I'm really appreciative of their work and for everyone who was able to listen. I use she, her pronouns. This is my family in November at the second meeting of states parties for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I know that WILPF is so involved in these UN treaties, and I'm so appreciative of all of your work. I currently work with Nukewatch. In the past, I've done international solidarity work. In Colombia, I did accompaniment. So working on making sure the people, the civilians, were not as much of a target in the middle of the civil war that was going on there. And now I'm back in the United States. So today I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my organization, Nukewatch. I'm going to talk about I know that you all are very keenly aware of the problems with nuclear weapons, and I'm going to tell you some about their links with nuclear power, talk about the dangers of nuclear power, why it cannot solve or help us solve the climate crisis, and why the new advanced nuclear reactors also cannot do that for us, and then talk about one of the local nuclear reactors that Nukewatch is working to close down. So I'm going to tell you about my organization, Nukewatch. It started in 1979. We're a nuclear watchdog environmental organization dedicated to the abolition of nuclear weapons, nuclear power, and militarism. We bring critical attention to the location, dangers, transport, and politics of all of the nuclear issues, and also radioactive waste. We advocate nonviolent resistance and intersectional solidarity in the spirit of the civil rights movement to help create a world free of war and oppression. Nukewatch has a long history of successful grassroots organizing across the nation. We began in the late 70s during the in response to the Cold War buildup of nuclear weapons and the secrecy surrounding the nuclear industry. We conducted track watch to monitor and expose secret train shipments of radioactive waste. Oh, sorry. And truck watch to monitor transportation of hydrogen bombs and parts in unmarked trucks by the Department of Energy. Hold on, I'm getting a call from one of your board members that I think I should take. I apologize. Hello? Yes, I'm in the middle of my talk. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Nukewatch for 13 years organized against the ELF project. We had 2 or 4 actions every year. People were arrested, over 500 arrests happened. And we were trying to close it down because it was a way for, it was a Navy base for to send secret communications to nuclear submarines to give them a first strike launch signal. And that was successfully closed in 2004. Recently, we've been involved in a solidarity campaign to support the German campaign to get the US nuclear weapons off of the German soil. And also, and so we've had some delegations to Germany, peace delegations, international peace camps going there. We are a member of ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. And we also work with the National Radioactive Waste Coalition to stop any unsafe or unjust radioactive waste storage. And now we're working to shut down the Monticello nuclear reactor, which is a couple hours from here. And I will talk more about that in a little bit. Nukewatch is also, we are dedicated to being war tax resistors, which means we'll do every possible effort to make sure we are not supporting the nuclear industry or militarism or war by paying federal taxes, which means we don't make very much money. It's not a dignified wage, but we do it because we love it and it's very important, as you all do. Okay. I will be putting in the chat when I am not sharing my screen, information about my organization and how you can be in touch with us too. You can also be putting in your questions so I can answer those later. I'll have some time for us answering questions. So to start off with the connection between nuclear weapons and nuclear power, the French president just said it so succinctly and openly for us a few years ago. Without civilian nuclear energy, there's no military use of this technology. And without military use, there's no civilian nuclear energy. That was a wonderful admission. He said something, it was sort of like Trump, like sometimes you want to know what's actually happening, even though they try to hide it. And it was like, okay. And so that was nice to hear that he was so frank about it. The nuclear weapons, when they began to exist, they needed a justification because the people who had created them realized that they had a bad rap from the beginning when people started realizing what had happened in Japan. And of course, much later, they realized what had happened right here in New Mexico in the United States, that they had dropped the very first test bomb in New Mexico. And there was a lot of secrecy about it because of how horrific nuclear weapons are. And so they had to create a different image. They had a public relations campaign. They called it Too Cheap to Meter. They created nuclear power as the peaceful side of the atom. And they called it Too Cheap to Meter. They made up a lot of lies. And a lot of you already know that history about why nuclear power was created in order to create plutonium and to make weapons, to have a way to make weapons. And now that's not currently the case, but there are so many inextricable links between the two industries that really, if you're against nuclear weapons, you should also be against nuclear power. A couple of years ago, there's a report that comes out every year called the World Nuclear Industry Status Report. And they clarified a lot of the links between these two industries. And they also acknowledged that the countries in the world that most fund nuclear power are the ones that also have nuclear weapons, because they need the nuclear engineers, they need the infrastructure, and so many things overlap. And so one of them is always propping up the other. So in the last few years, really after, every time there's a huge accident with nuclear power, people stop and say, oh, we better slow down. And some countries will say, oh, we're not going to do this anymore. And they put in a bunch of more restrictions and conditions and safety precautions. And then eventually the news cycle kind of stops covering it and they go back to where they were before. And after Fukushima, this happened. In 2011, the Fukushima Daiichi reactors, there were 3 explosions, meltdowns. That was big news, and people have pretty much stopped. People don't even know what Fukushima is anymore, basically. Also, the nuclear power industry has come up with a new line that is very timely. It's wonderful propaganda, wonderful public relations, and they're calling nuclear energy green and carbon free. And now in the last couple of years, kind of the unthinkable has happened. Really, a lot of people working against nuclear power had thought this isn't going to be, that's too expensive. It's not working, and we're going to have to go towards renewables. But now, in the last year or so, the entire industry has been propped up by this lie. The US has been bailing out old jalopy nuclear reactors so they can run well past their golden years until they are 80 years old. So this is a machine that's been a reactor building infrastructure that's been built to run 40 years. And now they're giving them tens of billions of dollars to fix up the old stuff. And when they can't get money, when the nuclear power reactors can't get money through the federal government, they just hike the rates for the ratepayer. And there's no way this can happen in a truly capitalist system, which some people want. But so the last few months, a lot of things have happened. During last November at the second meeting of states parties, in the final declaration they came out with, they also confirmed, this is the people opposed to nuclear weapons, the states parties, that is, they said that every nation has the inalienable right to develop nuclear technology for peaceful reasons. So that includes nuclear power. Nuclear power is not peaceful. It is very violent. At that same time, Biden and 22 other countries at the UN convening of parties, or COP, on climate change, they committed to tripling nuclear power production by 2050. Also, uranium mining has been being revived in the United States. The Pinyon Plain mine restarted in January, uranium mine. There are people over there opposing it fiercely. The Havasupai, the Dene, the Navajo Nation, have been opposing it, and mostly grassroots organizations, many of them indigenous led. 2 weeks ago, President Biden banned importing Russian uranium to the United States. So that's another reason that they're going to be increasing production in the United States. All at the same time, we have thousands of abandoned uranium mines, 500 abandoned uranium mines just on Navajo Nation that they're making people sick and killing people still. So this is really disappointing and scary. It's a scary turnaround. It's happening all over the nation. I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. So there's a lot of problems with nuclear power. There are the environmental justice issues first. The uranium, it starts with uranium, just like nuclear weapons. The uranium poisons. And then it goes, the entire nuclear fuel chain is the same. We go back to radioactive waste storage, which almost all of the proposals for siting a place to put this stuff, the waste, after nuclear weapons are created and after we've used our electricity, we turned on our light bulbs and, oh, we turned it back off. But now there are fuel rods coming out of nuclear reactors that are going to be poisonous, hazardous, deadly for 1 million years. The nuclear power industry in the United States has 90,000 metric tons of waste currently. It goes up, I think, a couple 100,000 tons every year. And more than 60 studies have shown increases of childhood leukemia around nuclear facilities worldwide. In fact, this is part of what I was discussing at the very beginning. At nuclear power plants, a lot of people don't realize this, but there are routine radioactive releases in addition to accidents that happen, and in addition to all of the poison that happens starting from the uranium mining. And around the closest areas around nuclear power plants, babies are twice as likely to be born with cancer, which means they had cancer before they were born. So that was my point at the very beginning. Also very high rates of childhood leukemia. And the US has not done any studies. They've refused to do any studies to affirm this, but there have been studies in Europe mostly and other countries. So the latest PR line that the nuclear power industry is giving us is that it's going to help us transition to renewable energy. But the fact is that it cannot. Nuclear power cannot even withstand climate change. So if we look at it from an economics perspective or development perspective, the nuclear reactors cannot be deployed fast enough to replace or transition from fossil fuel production by what was the deadline for transforming our entire energy system by 2030. And if we actually, this is an old fact. It's a few years old. When this quote was spoken at a economics forum, they said we would have to replace the existing 400 nuclear plants, build an additional 1,600. That means that would have meant years ago, 3 nuclear plants would have had to be built every 30 days for 40 years. And by that time, climate change will have run its course for us. So there's no way all of this, Biden and the international nations that have supported this push towards nuclear power are ignoring this fact. They're just ignoring it. So there's that part of why it can't solve the climate crisis. This is a cartoon of the proponents of, they call them advanced nuclear reactors or small modular reactors. It's the same thing with a new face. Am I looking good yet? No, it's the same thing. So nuclear cannot solve the climate crisis. It's an ecological crisis, not just climate change. We have to consider it as a whole. We have to think about the radioactive pollution. At a nuclear reactor, 30 million gallons of water are used every hour to cool them. We need cold water to cool a reactor. And over the last 6 years or so, with a lot of the heat waves coming through, the rivers have been heating, water is heating, and reactors have had to shut down because they don't have access to cold water. The other problem with climate change happening while we are trying to transition is that sea level rise around reactors is very dangerous. And several of the reactors currently are in danger, especially due to, like in Florida, flooding, hurricanes, and then just other problems are not going to make this safe at all. The new nuclear reactors I was mentioning have the same problems. They have been, from the studies, they're going to be producing 2 to 32 times more radioactive waste per unit of electricity generated than the current reactors. And so I'm going to talk to you about the Monticello nuclear reactor right now. Looks like I have 9 minutes total left. Is that correct? Okay. So the Monticello nuclear reactor is in Minnesota. It is, where I live is in the plume of where a radioactive plume would fall if there were a major accident there. The reactor has the same design as the Fukushima reactor and the same design flaw, as do 20 other reactors around the United States. I think there are 93 or 94 reactors currently still operating in the United States. So Nukewatch is opposing a license extension for this reactor. We have a deadline of June 10th to get public comments in to oppose the reactor's extension, so that it would run from 60 years to 80 years. Right now, its license permits it to run through 2030. So this is what I'm asking of you all. Yesterday, it looked like there were 244 comments that were posted publicly at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had posted. And now we're asking for every single one of you to find somebody under 40 and go submit your comments along with yours. So how many people are there here? I saw about 35 at the beginning. Oh, 42. Okay, 80 more comments. So let's get 80, 85 more, 84, 85 more comments come in. This is a really small thing we can do, but I want to tell you some really funny things that have been happening since Nukewatch has been involved in getting the information out. We have been reading their hundreds of pages of documents. One of the first funny things we found after a year and a half after a radioactive leak happened at this reactor, a year and a half, the company Excel and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission have been saying that there were no detectable levels of radioactive waste or radioactive contaminants that reached the Mississippi River. Well, it turns out we read their studies that say that it did. And so we brought it up with them at a meeting. And at the following meeting that we met with them, they had to admit that they had, well, you know, they didn't say they lied, but they apologized to us. So that was great. It was terrible to find out that we were right, because we had suspected this the whole time. The problem with tritium, one of the radioactive contaminants that was released in this leak a year and a half ago, reaching the Mississippi River, is that 20 million people drink water coming from the Mississippi River. That's their source of drinking water for 20 million people who live in cities along the river, from starting with suburbs of Minneapolis all the way down to New Orleans. The other funny thing we found out last week was we were looking through more of these hundreds of pages of documents and realized that the levels of tritium, the radioactive contaminant I mentioned earlier, the EPA has a level of 20,000 picocuries per liter allowable in drinking water. Last year, Xcel Energy was doing readings of the tritium in the monitoring well next to the river. It was going increasing. In 3 weeks' time, it increased 5-fold. It started off 30,000 or 3,000. I said to you earlier, the drinking water level, according to the EPA, safe drinking water level is 20,000. As soon as it reached 21,000 picocuries per liter, Xcel stopped taking measurements. And so you're actually some of the first people who have heard this. We haven't even been able to get out the publicity about this yet, but it's just something that's not surprising, I'm sure, but we caught them in a lie. And So all the more reason to be targeting this terrible company, this terrible industry. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to put some of the links in the chat. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do that while I was sharing my screen.
Yes,
But, I'll
Kelly,
take
some of the
questions.
some of the links were put in for you by our tech
Thank
team,
you. Thank
including
you.
the one about Monticello, but you can add whatever else you want. I'm glad I was muted because I was, cussing a lot during your presentation. So I'm so glad. We probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So I'm going to switch to gallery. Just raise your hand virtually if you can. I don't see anybody jumping up and down, but sometimes it takes a while to find that hand. So, Judy Adams, and we know Judy's very well versed on this topic. Let me unmute you, Judy, and go ahead.
I want to say that back in the 60s, my then husband and I lived near a nuclear facility that was underground with a chain link fence around it. Large, blocky, solid vans would come up this hill. They looked like big concrete blocks, go into the facility. And then we would see the little trucks coming by, checking all the meters on the fence, meaning how much radioactivity was coming our way. And they would take them down, and I would wave to them and say, how are we doing? And they would say, oh, it's good. Nothing wrong. And they were also storing above ground nuclear waste in barrels. I haven't had reactions, but this was a community, a farming community in Ohio. So,
what's the name of the facility?
I can't remember the name, but I can.
Where do you live?
It's in, I'm almost 80. I'll send you a note.
Yeah.
Miamisburg, Ohio. Miamisburg, Ohio, the home of the largest cone-shaped Indian burial ground, was right across the street from us. And pretty soon, all our neighbors who are still there may be in their own burial mounds from the nukes. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Wow.
Powerful witness there. Thank you for your note, Kelly, about our next speaker. We've got the note about the vote on RICA is in the, Lucille added that. So thank you so much. Regina Burchin has a hand up. We probably have just time for one more question, so then we'll stay on schedule. Go ahead. Let me unmute you, Regina. There you go.
Yes, this was an excellent presentation, and I'm in WILPF, Minnesota branch here in Minneapolis, and we support Nukewatch and completely. I think if you could send me some information, I can put it on our website and to our connections here to get that comment out. There are very few people from Minnesota on this call, and there are some reasons for that, but I'd like to share that information.
Wonderful. Are you, do you work with Susu Jeffries?
No, I'm here in St. Joseph with the Sisters of St. Benedict, and I'm on their committee on sustainability, so I can get that whole gang on this issue too, because Monticello is 30 minutes away.
Yes, we need to be in contact.
Jeffries is a member of the Minnesota branch.
Yeah.
She works closely with Regina. The Minnesota branch of WILPF, Susu Jeffries is in your branch.
Oh yeah, well, Susu's also very prominent in all the water issues. She is part of the Indigenous Network also. So of course, just send me the information.
Thank you so much.
We'll have to give your email to Kelly. Thank you, Regina, and thank you so much, Kelly. I'm so glad. I've been on the, following Nukewatch, but this is the first time I had a chance to see you. So thank you so much, and thank you for queuing us up for Sue Ann next. So somebody is probably unmuting her and getting her ready, but just thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. I will jump in and say that my name is Tina Shelton, since I didn't introduce myself earlier. I am a member of the Congress Program Planning Committee, which is different than the Program Committee when George introduced herself earlier, but you know, we're all on the same team. And I am here to introduce Sue Ann Martin and thank her for being here and creating that space for the work that she does. She is a member of Women Against Military Madness, and she's co-chair of the End Military Madness Against the Earth Committee. And I could say a lot more, but I'm going to stop and say thanks for being here, Sue Ann. And you are unmuted and you're ready to go. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Kelly, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I've seen about 3 presentations about Monticello and I still learned some new things. So, and of course I'm in Minneapolis and I'm definitely get my water out of the Mississippi. So it's of great interest, all of it. I am with Women Against Military Madness, and as we speak, they are doing their walk against weapons of war. It just happened to be scheduled at the same time. And so they are marching to a subsidiary or walking to a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. And they will be having some talks and having lots of bannering and signs. And then they'll walk back to the park where they're going and have a little rally. But this is an annual event. It's the 17th annual, but it's again the weapons of war. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some more general things. There's been such incredible good information on this conference so far, and it's going to continue. So I will just go ahead. A just transition to a regenerative economy must end wars, military culture, and the violence of militarized forces and police in our communities and across the world. That's a quote from a woman by the name of Shay. She's in the Indigenous Peoples Network, and she is a Pacific Islander. So my first question is empire really dying? If, as Boris Johnson predicts, Western powers lose the war in Ukraine, will Western homogeny die? In his geopolitical economy report, Ben Norton discusses ex-UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's point of view, which, while published in a right-wing British tabloid, is probably not just propaganda. This belief by Johnson is also held by Biden and company, and company means the Democrats and affiliates, as well as right-wing Republicans, is driving the US Congress to grant billions of dollars for war. As Norton states, it is only the global North or the collective West that has imposed sanctions on Russia. That's about 6 countries who are allies of the US plus the EU, the European Union. The view of the end of Western homogeny was expressed earlier this year by the European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell, who said that the era of Western dominance has indeed definitely ended. It appears that the continued funding of the Ukraine war regarding Russia, of Taiwan regarding China, and of Israel in the Middle East, in spite of worldwide opposition to the genocide, is clearly about hegemonic domination, also described by a more old-fashioned word, empire. In the anti-war pro-peace movement, we often say we don't understand the motivation of the continued funding of the wars when in America our own people are suffering. When the ruling elite and media say the economy is healthy, what they mean is the petrodollar still dominates and drives the economy. As Ken Pintel of the Economy Democracy Network explains, the petrodollar, petroleum or oil dollar,
is at the root of the economy, driving everything from transportation to food to plastic to housing and so much of what we produce. In other words, the economy built on the petrodollar is threatened. US and Western homogeny, therefore, is threatened. It's still the economy, stupid, if you remember that from Clinton years. What complicates things exponentially is the climate crisis and the on-the-ground battles for oil resources and other precious metals, and now wars are beginning over water. As long as the West dominates, it has access to these resources in the neo-colonial policies that characterize the relationship of the multinational corporations with countries of the global South, which basically means they are robbing them blind. Nation and worldwide, people are addressing these problems by challenging the system piecemeal, including the financial system that supports it all, by calling out the banks and the corporations they fund, while the CEOs and stockholders thrive at the expense of their workers. They are challenged by union movements and by addressing poverty, hunger, and homelessness in an economy that basically makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. It is not just the US that's involved. France's Total Energies and China are planning to build an oil pipeline across Central Africa, ignoring the climate crisis, which, along with nuclear war, is the greatest threat to humanity at the present time. We are beyond stopping climate chaos, but it still needs to be mitigated as much as humanly possible. If we do not do something about the climate crisis, which is in the process of enveloping us all, we endanger the world. Melissa Garriga, I don't know if I pronounced that right, of Code Pink explains, we can shift from endless growth toward genuine well-being by valuing air quality, food security, and environmental sustainability. Instead of the GDP, we could use the GPI to measure the economy, the genuine progress indicator that puts the military in the category of expenses where it belongs. And we could stop a never-ending cycle that masks the actual cost of conflict, prioritizing financial profit over genuine progress in education, healthcare, and biodiversity. Fossil fuel is, as we know, the greatest cause of global warming, and the US, with our 1,000 military bases worldwide, is the greatest fossil fuel perpetrator in the world. But there is another massive threat as well. Above all, water is life. Yesterday, we heard several informative speakers talk about global, national, and local action around water. Today, we've already heard from Nukewatch and about the Monticello nuclear power plant. Later today, there are in-depth discussions about and information about the effects of PFAS or PFAS, and that is connected directly to the military in many of its forms. You will hear about the pollution in our oceans, and you will hear about the Golden Rule, a sailboat that started an epic voyage in the Twin Cities, the Minneapolis-St. Paul, last year to raise awareness about nuclear war, and is, of course, continuing to sail around the country and world to raise awareness about nuclear war. From me, now you hear about the newest pipeline threatened Minnesota, proposed through sacred native land, just like Standing Rock and Line 3, at the National Monument at Pipestone, where for centuries, the blood red stone has been used to create pipes for ceremony. It's been found all over the country. I mean, for centuries, they did trading. So tomorrow also, among other things, you will hear Tim Walz with warheads to windmills, who's heading an international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons and convert the resources to climate solutions, with their suggestions for international action. Many communities around the country and the world are taking action. Even if not seeing the full connections, we do know what is at stake. Justice at the heart of climate activism. repeat that, justice at the heart of climate activism, is the title of an article in Yes Magazine that emphasizes intersectionality and the connections. Women-led groups such as the Asian Pacific Environmental Network and Intersectional Environmentalists have an intersectional understanding of climate activism. To quote Vivian Huang of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, the lives of our members, like the lives of all people, are impacted by many intersecting issues. Members don't just care about the air pollution impacting their health. They care about economic opportunities, access to livelihoods, and addressing the racial injustice that they see, as we understand the many ways that racial justice, economic justice, and climate justice intersect and directly and indirectly affect our lives. The work of the activist group Intersectional Environmentalists involves not just self-identified environmentalists, but housing advocates, food sovereignty activists, engineers, doctors, nurses, artists, poets, anyone who cares about people and the planet. And of course, the water protectors of all stripes. In conclusion, real safety comes from us having what we need. It comes from our communities having stable housing, good jobs, healthcare, and connection, a cohesion with one another, says Wang. The health of the planet and of the people is connected. The modern ecological movement understands these connections, but does not always see the connections to the specter of militarism. Educator, scholar, activist Henry Giroux calls upon us to see the international connections, the intersectionality, and the need for connection and collaboration. We need and are continuing to develop the new modes of politics he calls for. Power is global and politics is local. That must change. We need a new language for understanding new global power systems and formations, as well as new international modes of politics to fight them. Social movements must move outside of national boundaries and join with others across the globe to fight the savagery of neoliberal global politics, and central to such a task is the work of all in the fight against the current anti-democratic threats being imposed all over the globe. Our tech world, for all its advantages, can isolate and separate us from each other. It also can educate us, as this WILPF Congress has certainly done. It does not, cannot replace human contact and community. Hope lies in community. Cultivate collaborative communities, normalize resistance, do not forget to rest in order to rise, and as the indefatigable Molly Ivans recommended, don't forget to have some fun. The future of the planet depends on us all. That's the end of my part of the presentation, and I want to turn it over now to the boundary waters, because it's the boundary waters, which Sarah Thompson mentioned last night in her song, is so important, and it is an international recreation area and wilderness area. So
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Lee. We're just going to roll right in. Go ahead, get started.
Thanks. Thank you, Sue. Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Vu. I'm the current board chair of the Friends of the Boundary Waters. The executive director, Chris Knopf, was supposed to be here, but had to do something else. And so I'm sort of stepping in. And I am so excited to be in this space and in community with you all who are really passionate and care deeply about our planet and humanity. So before I kind of dive into what the organization is and what we do, just a bit of context of who I am and why do you have this young Asian American like at the helm of this organization?
Woo!
What's the connection, which is wonderful. So I'm Hmong American. I grew up in Fresno, California. So my parents immigrated to Fresno from the refugee camps of Thailand after the Secret War, which is obviously tied with the Vietnam War. And they, had very little education, spoke no English. And so they mostly worked on farmlands. to sort of make a living and mostly under the table. And so I spent my childhood like just kind of running around fields and living in communities that were with undocumented immigrants as well as with Black and Brown folks. And so then we moved to Minnesota when I was in 6th grade because Minnesota, particularly the Twin Cities, has such a large Hmong community. And that's where I sort of really came into my being of understanding like water, the environment. I went on this wilderness trip to the Boundary Waters when I was 13 years old, and that was actually funded by Friends of the Boundary Waters. And that experience and future experiences accumulated, you know, more Boundary Waters trips, other river paddling experiences and expeditions really solidify my love for rivers, the environment, the outdoors, and water. So as a child, my relationship with water, like many folks, you know, was pretty basic, right? You see in the irrigation ditch, it rains, you can use it in running water. And so I think oftentimes when you have something, you don't understand the value of it until it's gone. And so these experiences that I had in the Boundary Waters really, I think, you know, made me understand the vulnerability of our planet to the exploitation and trauma that we as humans have inflicted on it. So my involvement with the Friends sort of is closely tied with that, obviously. So having been looped back with this organization and this mission-driven, I think, mentality to ensure that all communities have access to clean water. And so that's why I'm here today, and that's why I'm part of this organization. So I'm gonna also be sharing a PowerPoint and kind of go through it, but to kind of give you the context. So before I really start, I just want to acknowledge that this area that I'm going to talk about was long there before it became the Boundary Waters. And so at Friends of the Boundary Waters, we acknowledge that the land and water that we are dedicated to protecting is on the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe people who continue to live and exercise their treaty rights on this land and water. And so it's really important for us that that is a continuous understanding and that folks also realize that, like, yes, this piece of area is 1.1 million acres with like 1,200 lakes. It has some of the cleanest water, but it was there before it became the Boundary Waters. The Boundary Waters is really rich in natural resources, right, for timber, water, and minerals. And so our organization was founded in 1976. We're celebrating 50 years in 2026, so this is pretty exciting, by really just ordinary, passionate people who wanted to protect this area. And so the organization was really part of helping pass the 1978 Boundary Waters Protection Act, which makes the Boundary Waters what it is today, right? Pretty pristine, no motors, people can enjoy it. And so since then, our supporters have been pivotal in really fighting against activities that would erode the wilderness character. And so the work that we do in the Boundary Waters alongside the Superior National Forest, as well as within the Aquatico Superior ecosystem, is to really ensure that this area is managed within the sound ecological principles, right? That it continues to retain its wilderness character. But we also believe that the future of the wilderness depends on people and getting the next generation of diverse people to fall in love with the wilderness. And so there are 3 pillars of our organization. We protect the wilderness through advocacy and conservation. We connect students from all backgrounds to the wonders of Boundary Waters. And so we are committed to promoting equity in the wilderness and fostering the next generation of enthusiasts through our No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters program. We also embed ourselves into the gateway communities. So if you live in Ely or Grand Marais, to really ensure that their voices are heard and that their communities continue to thrive, as well as to support the wilderness in the capacity that they can, right? Some beautiful Boundary Waters images. I think it's important to note that one of the biggest threat to the Boundary Waters is copper sulfide mining and its surrounding waterways, right? So sulfide mining is the process of extracting trace amounts of copper, nickel, and other metals from sulfide-bearing ores. And how this happens, right? It produces sulfuric acid, which is the same as battery acid, if you just think about that. And so what this will do is acidify the lakes and rivers. It also leaches out really heavy metals such as mercury, lead, arsenic, and other toxins. And so this type of mining is so toxic that sulfide mines that do exist, you know, they have always contaminated their surrounding areas and water sources. And just for folks that need a little science in terms of numbers, the ore that these companies are mining, the traces of copper is so minute, copper and nickel are so minute, it is like less than 1% of that ore. So that's what we are fighting against, right? And so this is sort of a map of where that would look like in terms of the mining area. So this is the boundary waters. And this is what one of the sites is at. This is the Twin Metals site. So that's right at the boundary waters. And then this is the Polymite site, which is more closer to like Lake Superior and the Superior ecosystem. So our strategies at the organization involves litigation, legislation, which you know, is where our Prove It First bill lies. And that is really just common sense legislation. So basically it says that before a copper mine could be permitted in Minnesota, they have to have independent proof that there's a similar mine that has operated for the last 10 years without causing pollution, and that that mine has closed for at least 10 years without causing pollution. And then we also do citizens action as well as political action. And I think, you know, Indigenous folks have always been at the forefront of all these environmental struggles and fights. And so one of our most important partners against polymet is the Fond du Lac Reservation, which they would be directly impacted by that mine, right? Their waters, their waterways, the ricing, their livelihoods. And so for us, we know that the work that we're doing, the effort that we're doing is so interconnected with all these other communities, particularly Indigenous communities, and their efforts in liberation. And so we really value partnership as well as the power of people. And we continue to center communities, I think, in our efforts, because we know that what happens to one community impacts us all, right? So yes, at the Boundary Waters, like Friends of the Boundary Waters, we're protecting the Boundary Waters, but what we're really doing is also protecting clean water for Minnesota, for this country, and for all of us. And for me, water is a basic necessity. I think we all know that. That's why we're all here. It is as basic as our human rights that we all need in life to really live and thrive. And so when you're willing to jeopardize that, what does that really say about these, particularly, I think, companies, but these other entities that want to just exploit these waterways for their own purposes and selfishness? So that is it. I wanted to make sure that I stayed within 10 minutes.
And you did, thank you. And
yeah.
I believe we have time for like 2 minutes of questions. I want to thank you for your beautiful slides. It's really helpful to have the visuals. And I'm just going to switch to little gallery so I can see if hands are getting raised. I know it takes a minute to find the little button, but I want to thank you for your work. I can see why Suann was so excited about us having you on. Oh, and there's a hand. Kelly. Let's unmute you. There we go.
Sorry. Lee, I don't know. So in Wisconsin, we have the Flambeau mine by Lady Smith that's been used as one of the, are they using that mine as a cleaned up, reclaimed mine? Okay.
No, they're not. And the Prove First is actually influenced by what Wisconsin had for years before it disappeared. But that is, yeah, that mine is not utilized in the narrative. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The Flambeau mine close to where I live was closed in the 90s, and they say it's all cleaned and reclaimed, but I work with a group, Deer Tail Scientific, that has proven it is contaminated. So in case they try to pull out that one and say, oh, the Flambeau mine is an example of a similar mine. No, it's not. It's contaminated. Thank you. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Joan Goddard has a question. Go ahead.
Hi. I really appreciate you showing us the images, because my sister and her husband for many years. I don't know whether it's as many as 20 or what. They live in Wisconsin, and they've been going to the Boundary Waters every year, and I've never realized what it looks like. Somehow or other, I never saw any pictures that really got it across like you did, and I'm so glad that people are working on the problems. Thank you very, very much. I wanted to say that and give other people a chance to get ready to ask their questions. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Laura, let's unmute you. There we go. Whoop.
Hi, I'm wondering, is this an election issue this year? And what are the balance of the forces in the legislature and governor's office? So I'm wondering, and also I'm wondering if this has become a nonpartisan issue, which I remember another speaker yesterday talked about how we have to make these environmental issues nonpartisan.
Yeah, I think these are all nonpartisan issues, right? Because it impacts everyone. But I think the way that the landscape of our political situation has made people sort of think that it leans this way or that way. And I would say that we are working really hard to ensure that both parties, multiple parties, understand the value of this bill and what it can ensure for Minnesota. I mean, I think with any bill that you have, there's always going to be opposition or just other agendas that are at play. And so I would say it's been a challenge for us, right? Because there's so many different things that folks are trying to juggle and trying to advance while you're trying to push this forth. And so I think what we're really doing is ensuring that people, right, bring this to the caucus and then really advocate for it into their district and then their lawmakers. So that's sort of my answer to your question. Yeah.
I would like to say something else, if I may. This is Sue Ann.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay. I just want to emphasize that as we work in our respective groups, we should always be making and mentioning the connections with the similar struggles in other parts of the world in the country. With Ferguson, intersectionality took the form of Palestinian flags that made a statement. At minimum, we need to recognize genocide and apartheid in other parts of the world, including our own against Black and Indigenous peoples. When we're talking about Gaza, we need to mention and raise awareness that U.S. insistence on world domination through the military is exacerbating the climate crisis worldwide. Again, the effects of PFAS are linked through our military bases. And the U.S. military in its contaminating the use of fossil fuels needs to be mentioned, along with the ecocide rampant in Yemen, in Ukraine, and of course in Gaza.
Thank you, Sue. I love, Sue Ann, that we have this big connection. I want to squeeze one more question in, so thanks for making that connection. Lucille?
Okay, thank you.
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to ask Lee, to what extent the Friends of the Boundary Waters is regional, as in Northern US and Southern Canada, or, national, binational? And if it's the latter, can you give those of us who have been there as teens too, but camping, but aren't now, live in other regions of the country, in terms of what angle we can give in voicing ourselves that matters to those who are the decision makers? Thanks.
Yeah, so I would say the Boundary Waters is a state, right? Because it's in Minnesota, but because you've had so many people that have experienced it, that have then moved on outside to live wherever, they have a stake in it, right? They're the stakeholders as well. And so they also care deeply, and that's become part of their norms. They come to experience it, or they send their kids there. And it's a wilderness, and it's one of the most highly visited wilderness compared to all the other wilderness, right? It's like maybe one small one, but it's like top in visits. And so I would say that while it is a state issue, it is truly a national one, right? Because what happens to this wilderness impacts all other wilderness. It sets the precedence. And so while our focus right now is ensuring that there's protection at the state level, we know that we also have strategies in place to make it national and like figure out like what does that look like to ensure that there's federal protection, right? So then if you can have protection at all these levels, whoever is in the seat of power, we all know, so that they can't just undo all of these protections, right? So you have to have all of these locks in place is what I sort of feel like, versus just maybe one that could easily be repealed. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping that short. I know that's a complicated question, so I appreciate it. We are so excited that you were able to join us and for just your presence, as you say, as a young Asian person in this big, this big movement. So we appreciate your presence and you being here.
Thank you.
And now I get to introduce Cherrill Spencer. So hang around as long as you like, Lee, as long as you can. I'm introducing Cherrill Spencer of the Disarm Committee, who is bringing another voice, another powerful voice, Peter Gleich, to this community. And most of us know Cherrill Spencer she's a retired experimental physicist who's been with Disarm, a powerful force in the Disarm committee. And I'm going to stop there and hand it off to her. Thank you, Cherrill. You are unmuted, up and ready to share.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just leaving this introduction slide up for a couple of seconds, as I know some people are still joining us. And just to give you an overview, Eileen, Kurkoski and I are members of the Disarm Committee, and we'd like you after the Congress to go visit our new webpage, which is there, but you can find it through the WILPF website, where we tell you what we are doing. We have 11 campaigns at the moment and many resources for you to use. And I'm now going to go to the next slide. Okay. So
you're not in slides, so
there we are. There we are. So just before we watch the video by Dr. Glick from the Pacific Institute, just to remind you some notable statistics on water, that it's a very bleak picture. Thank you very much to all the people we've already heard this morning, which have given you bleak pictures and some hopeful pictures as well. So 2 billion people on Earth globally lack safely managed drinking water. About half the people on Earth experience severe water scarcity at some point during the year. Yes.
Cherrill, can you hit slideshow to make it bigger for us all?
Yes. Is it this one?
It's usually the slide. There we go. It worked.
There we go. Sorry. So I now have to move this over, right? Sorry. So, okay. 10% of the increases in global migration that have been happening have been linked to water deficits. And just to remind you that safety, drinking water and sanitation are human rights. Without them, a life of dignity, stability, and good health is virtually impossible. So we're going to hear Dr. Glick. He's a leading scientist in water issues. He co-founded the Pacific Institute in Oakland, California in 1987. And that institute is a great source of solutions and information about water from very many different points of view. And he is actually a scientist trained at this intersection of hydrology, climatology, and policy. And so he is very often consulted by the United Nations and other organizations because of his work. Social justice, sustainability, human rights, and integrated thinking are what he is famous for. So now I am going to close this particular share. I'm going to stop this share, and then I'm going to go to the video. So just hang on while I bring that one up. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so now I need to restart the share. Ooh, this is so complicated, isn't it?
You put the sound, click the sound on.
Oh yeah,
Right,
don't forget.
share sound, optimize, share. Okay. All right, so now are you all seeing this?
Yeah, you push.
Yes, we are.
Yes,
You
you
have
are.
to play it and
I'm
enlarge.
going to play it. Oh,
Well, thank you very much, Carl. So I think you could see when I said that Carl is a photojournalist par
Screen there.
excellence and an explorer. He's been around the world addressing these global water issues, looking at the communities on the ground.
Cheryl,
That
did you
photograph, I have a
did you
copy of it on
check
my
to
office
make sure
wall.
that the
His
video,
ability to both
the
tell the
sound
story
I
and
did.
show the people involved
Yes.
is quite remarkable. So thank you for setting that up. So I'm going to now give a sort of an overview of the
the sound is great, but could you make it full screen?
Water, war, and peace. I'm going to talk a little bit about
It
the
is.
history of strategies, the
No,
history of
you go to
conflict
the
over water,
video and
and
in the
ultimately
bottom
focus on
right-hand
strategies
Right there,
corner of the
right there.
video, there's a
Right,
little
that square.
box on the right.
those
Yeah.
risks.
Yeah.
Okay. So that. Okay.
Now, let me start with a summary so that you know where I'm going. There's a long history of violence associated with water resources, going back more than 4,000 years and continuing literally to.
Oh, sorry. No, my fault. What did I do?
Just click the air there.
The types of conflicts that we think about at the Pacific Institute, the way we organize our thinking around this is water as a trigger of conflict. That is the issue of disputes over control or access to water, where water itself triggers violence. Water as a weapon of conflicts that may start for other reasons, but where water or water systems are used as weapons of war. And water is a casualty of conflict, where water or water systems, again, are the victims or targets of conflicts. Again, conflicts that may start for other reasons, but where water systems are attacked. And I'll talk about specific examples, but those are the categories. And typically when there's a conversation about water and conflict, mostly it's about the first one. Water is a trigger. Water is scarce. People are fighting over water. But all three of these categories turn out to be extremely important. The causes of conflict include a lot of different things. We're not talking really here about water wars, but about water as a consequence, water and water systems as consequences, victims, casualties of conflicts. Conflicts start for religious reasons, ideological reasons, disputes over economics or borders, and hydrologic factors, including now, as Carl has hinted, and others will talk about, climate change. Reducing the risks of water-related conflicts require all sorts of solutions. There are technological solutions, there are economic approaches, there are political approaches, and international law plays a role here. And there are improvements in water management. All of those can contribute to reducing the risks of conflicts over water. So there is no one solution to this problem. This is, like water itself, a multivariate problem, an interdisciplinary problem. Fresh water is very widely shared internationally. Half of the land area of the planet is in what we call an international river basin. Rain falls, it runs off in a river. Those rivers, for half of the land area of the planet, are shared by 2 or more countries. And I think many of you, I think all of us would be hard pressed to think of a major river that is ultimately not shared by 2 or more countries. The Mississippi River in the United States is actually shared by Canada and the United States. The Colorado River is shared by the US and Mexico. The Nile is shared by 11 countries in Egypt. The Amazon, we think of, okay, it's in Brazil, it's shared by many countries in South America. So the fact that so much of the water of the planet is shared internationally contributes to the risks of conflicts and the need to think about political solutions to these issues. There's growing competition for water. Populations are rising, economies are expanding, demands for the fixed amount of water on the planet is expanding. There are inequities, major inequities around the world in who has access to and control of water resources. That contributes to tensions. And there's growing environmental degradation around water resources broadly, including this issue of climate change. Finally, another contributing factor here is that efforts to resolve disputes over shared water resources are often inadequate, and I'll come back to that, and other speakers will as well. One of the things we do at the Pacific Institute is we maintain something called the water conflict chronology. For those of you unaware of the conflict chronology, it's the most comprehensive, largest open source database worldwide of violence associated with water resources. You can see the URL here, worldwater.org. Google water conflict chronology, and it will come up. This is a screenshot of the homepage. And there are a lot of aspects to it, but one of them is there's an online interactive map. You can sort these data based on time. You can sort the data based on the type of conflict. You can sort the database based on region. Each of these data points can be clicked on individually, and it brings up an example. There are now over 1,300 entries in the water conflict chronology. I mentioned this at the beginning. We separate them by category. Water as a trigger of conflict or a root cause of conflict. Examples today are pastoralists and nomads, or pastoralists and farmers in Africa are fighting over access to land and water points. Scarcity and drought in India and Iran over the last several years have contributed to disputes between farmers and urban water users that have led to violence associated with water. So those are a few examples. Water is a weapon of conflict. Diverting water away from villages or opening floodgates on dams in Iraq has been a serious problem in Iraq and Syria. I'll show a slide about that. Attacks on water infrastructure, unfortunately, in the last few months in Ukraine have contributed to the database as well. And water is the casualty of conflict. Again, the Ukraine is an example where water systems have been explicitly attacked and are casualties of conflict, where water infrastructure has been attacked. We saw this in World War II. We saw this during the Vietnam War. We saw this in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Again, conflicts that start for other reasons, but where water or water systems are casualties of conflicts. This is a graph that shows data from the water conflict chronology just over the last 20 or 21 years, showing first of all, the trend in the number of entries in the conflict chronology over time, showing a significant increase in the last few years, and then broken out over those three categories, showing that, again, in the last few years, the numbers of entries have been dominated by water as a trigger of conflict. That's the blue part of those bars, and water as a casualty or victim of conflict, where water or water infrastructure has been attacked, and a smaller number where water has been a weapon of conflict. Again, a significant increase in the last few years, which in my mind is a disturbing trend in the conflict discussion. This just shows a breakdown by region. Every region in the world has examples, but the largest number of conflicts in the last, this is actually for the entire database, have been in Western Asia or the Middle East. These are the UN categories, UN-defined categories. No significant number in South Asia, in Sub-Saharan Africa, and Northern Africa. But again, no region of the world has been immune from the risk of violence associated with water resources. A couple of case study examples. Both Irina and Liz will talk about these in more detail. This is a quote from former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said, "Too often where we need water, we find guns instead." And that, I thought, was a very well, an important way of describing this problem. We've worked at the Pacific Institute on water in the Middle East quite extensively. We published a paper fairly recently summarizing this issue in Iraq and Syria during the recent serious conflicts there with the Islamic State. This is simply a map of the Tigris and the Euphrates River, where historically there have been conflicts over water, including, I would note, the very first entry in the water conflict chronology in 2400 BC is in exactly this region. But during the Islamic State violence, the civil war in Syria and the violence in Iraq, every one of the major pieces of water infrastructure sort of circled here. You can't really see it very well, but all the dams on the Tigris, all the dams on the Euphrates were either attacked, were taken over by different parties at different times during the conflict. Water was withheld from communities from this infrastructure, or used to flood communities during this violence. There are lots of examples. In the Ukraine, in recent months, literally just a few months ago, at the Kakhovka Dam, the dam itself was attacked. Some of the floodgates were destroyed by the Russians, releasing water from the reservoir behind the dam. This is the picture on the top here, shows literally the explosion in November to prevent the Ukrainians from crossing over the dam. And then you could see in the bottom picture the release of water from those damaged floodgates from some of the satellite images of the dam. And then this is a satellite image showing the dam and the reservoir right before that dam was attacked. It's a little hard to show. Is there a yeah, it doesn't really show. This is the dam right here on the left side of the screen. And it shows the dam intact and the reservoir behind the dam. And then this is a satellite photo just from about a month ago, showing, first of all, the release of water from the dam circled in the red circle. You can see the water being released from the dam, and the decrease in water level. Maybe I can go back. If you look at the upper right, that's the water level when the water level was fairly high in the reservoir, and then the water level has been drawn down very dramatically. Water has been released. The Ukrainians are trying to release water upstream to refill the dam, but the water is flowing out of the dam at the moment. So quick comments about solutions. We talked about the Water Peace and Security Partnership that all of us here have been participating in. A year or two ago or longer, Charlie, I have to ask Charlie, how long ago was this? We released the 2020. Thank you. That was Charlie Iceland. We released a report called Ending Conflicts Over Water, in which we talk about solutions to these issues. And in particular, there's a lot of detail in that report. I urge you to take a look at it if you're interested in this issue, and I won't go into much detail. But we talk about technical solutions. That is, how do we address water scarcity, to remove water scarcity from being a trigger of conflict, improve efficiency, change access to water sources, improve access to water supply, water waste, reuse, and water treatment and reuse are technical solutions. We looked at economic solutions. How do we improve allocation of water? How do we reduce inappropriate subsidies for water that waste water, or provide positive subsidies to encourage farmers or urban water users to be more efficient in their water use? How do we expand investment in water infrastructure so that everyone has access to safe water and sanitation that reduces tensions over access and control of water resources? There are a whole series of management issues. How do we improve institutions that manage water resources worldwide? A lot of the tensions over water resources are due to bad management. And so if we can improve water management institutions, as an example, that can reduce tensions over water resources. And then a whole series of political, diplomatic, or legal actions. How do we better implement international laws of war? How do we better enforce international laws of war? The Geneva Conventions prohibit attacks on civilian water infrastructure. Those laws have not ended attacks on water infrastructure. And as you saw from the graph that shows trends over time, those attacks have been increasing. The world community is not good at enforcing existing political legal systems. One more comment about this. The UN water meeting for the last few days has had a number of sessions that I'm sure many people here have either listened to or attended on transboundary water cooperation. The UN has focused enormous attention on how do we improve transboundary water cooperation, and that's a critical issue. But I would note that there's a gap there, and a gap that I'd like to highlight at this session, which is many of the conflicts over water now are not transboundary. They're not nation to nation. There's subnational conflicts. There are conflicts between farmers and urban water users over allocation and control of water. There are conflicts between pastoralists and farmers over access to land and water rights. We absolutely need to improve transboundary international cooperation over rivers that cross borders, but we also need to come up with strategies to reduce those conflicts that are not transboundary, but that are subnational. And I think that's an issue that gets too little attention. So in summary, the causes of water conflict include long-standing political, religious, ideological, economic, and hydrologic factors. I haven't talked much about climate change. I'm a climate scientist. The climate is changing. Water is a critical component of that. And so a lot of the attention to reducing the risks of water-related conflict has been ignoring the issue of climate change. That's an added pressure, and we can no longer ignore it. But just as water has been a source of conflict and violence, it can be a source of peace and cooperation and sustainable development. I would note that a lot of the things that I listed on solutions, those are things we want to do for sustainable water management anyway. We want to provide access to 100% of the world's population to safe water and sanitation. We want better water management. We want to integrate climate change into water issues. All of those things, independent of the issue of conflict, are things that we need to do. And the more of those we do, the less likely we are to see conflicts over water increasing. Some major international rivers have agreements. I haven't addressed this very much, but most of the major shared water resources of the world don't have river agreements. The Nile has an old agreement between the Sudan and Egypt, but the other parties aren't members to that agreement. And so we need to bring all of the parties on these transnational rivers into agreements on every major river of the world. And then finally, the trends are in the wrong direction. You saw the trends increasing, showing increasing violence associated with water, and new strategies for cooperation are urgently needed. So let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, so there you have the world's expert on conflict and water. And now I'm going, sorry. No, I'm sorry, we're not finished. Oh, sorry. No, I need to stop that. My fault. Sorry, I need to.
Oh, yes, you just need to go back there and yeah,
right,
stop it.
Sorry,
And
stop it. Now I'm going to go to show some more slides to help a discussion that we're going to try to get you to do. Okay, so I need to go to here. And I need to share screen again. Just a minute. And here. And not sharing. This is now a regular.
There we go.
Yes, and so we saw that. And so we saw, now I'm just going to go down here. Okay, so all right, just a minute. I'm trying to get down to number 4 here. So why is it I don't have control? So just let me take that away. Sorry. Come back to, I need to close that one completely. And sorry about this. I'm getting there.
While you're getting ready, Cherrill, I'm just to say thank you so much for bringing that work to us. I know you and Eileen have talked to us before about Peter Gleick's work, and it was very informative. So we
Yes,
really
right.
appreciate you bringing it to this Congress. And when you're ready, just do your slides again. I know Eileen is ready to join you in discussion for questions in a few minutes. There we go.
All right, so now coming down to slide 4, I hope. Resume slideshow. Okay, so we did that. Now, just to bring you up to date, that slideshow, that video of Dr. Glick speaking at a UN meeting, actually, is 2 years old. So since then, they've updated their water conflicts. And you can see now he's got 2022, and here they were halfway through 2023. So their 1,250 conflicts went up to 1,600, okay? And the 2023 update includes the data from Russia and Ukraine. It was before the October the 7th event. So they actually don't have the ones in Gaza yet. So that's the trouble. You can see the number of water conflicts going up over this last 23 years. So, of course, unfortunately, we have examples in the Palestinian territories. Doyle will take questions at the end of these slides, okay? So UN actually said humans have the right to water in 2010, and international humanitarian law says that you should protect civilian water infrastructure, prohibits the use of water as a weapon. And yet, as we know, in Palestine, in the West Bank, Israel is already, even before October the 7th, destroying water wells and storage tanks. And now, of course, it's disrupting the water supplies in Gaza. And you've all seen the unfortunate pictures of that. So just to remind you that these were the 4 strategies that Dr. Glick mentioned for ending conflict over water. And so what we want to encourage WILPF members is, how can we take part in these strategies? You've heard from other NGOs this morning. And so what we would like to kind of reframe the thought was, how do we build peace via water topics? Not just stop the conflict, but build peace. So let us think about how water can be at the center of peace building. And there is a World Water Day every year. It was the 22nd of March this year. And their theme was water for peace. Okay, so let's just focus on the conflicts, but how can water be at the center of peace building? This is, overall the theme of this Congress. We're looking for building peace through water. So it can act as a medium for collaboration and cooperation. It can unite communities and decision makers, and we're looking for equitable and resilient water solutions. So they actually had 3 principles. They said solutions should be inclusive, cross-sectoral, and action-oriented. Okay, well, I had to look up those words. So this was their report that they have written about water for peace and prosperity. What's a sector? Well, these are the sectors the UN has identified that are involved in water issues: agriculture, human settlements, etc. So cross-sectoral means that different sectors will work on projects around water. And inclusive means that indigenous, traditional communities, young people, women, and concerned stakeholders should all be involved in projects around water and peace. So now I'm going to hand it over to Eileen, and I'll leave this slide up, Eileen, and now you should speak about some hopeful coalitions that are already going on towards peace and water. So will you let Eileen speak, please?
Sure, we'll let her speak.
Should I? Okay, I am on. Thanks very much, Cherrill, and good to be here. As you know, I'm Eileen, and I'd like to share something about Peter Glick and the Institute and the coalition he has set up. But first, I need to add that Peter Glick and the Pacific Institute recognized early the problems that would result from clean water scarcities. They have been working on many levels to prevent abate and resolve many complex issues that affect our vital waters. And I think he really does mean it when he says that he wants to use water to prevent wars. In 2010, Dr. published a book called Bottled and Sold, exposing what was happening in the bottled water industry. The book spelled out what was needed to protect the public. And I believe it influenced the changes in the quality of the bottled water and the labels on bottles, because there was improvement over the past 5 years. You can learn more about the bottled water and tap water issues by attending my Congress presentation at 5:15. So it was kind of a promo. Also, long ago, Peter Glick, with his integrative thinking, he's amazing. New important changes will not occur unless corporate leaders in water and water needing industries were not involved in the changes. He and the UN established the Water Resilience Coalition, which is an industry-driven, CEO-led coalition. It's an initiative with a CEO water mandate in partnership with the UN and the Pacific Institute. Members include, listen to this, Diageo, Dow Chemical Company, Ecolab, Gap, Microsoft, you know, Bill Gates owns most of the farms in the US, PVH, and even Dr. Pepper beverages. I have to admit, I was very suspicious of this coalition. I thought that big money would buy him out, but I have second and third thoughts about that now, although I do keep track of what they're doing because their information is really very helpful for us, especially if we want solid information when we're out there doing our activism. Okay, let's talk about this coalition. All WRC members must be signatories to the UN Global Compact, worth reading. To join, companies must commit to 10 principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. To be a WRC Leadership Committee member, yearly dues range from 50 to 100K. But I'm not in that category. For general members, it's 15 to 20. The Leadership Committee includes up to 20 companies, members, including external advisors like the Pacific Institute. It sets up overall strategies for the vision of the coalition and are responsible for tracking their goals and progress, as you would expect. They convene at least 2 times a year to address their shared barriers and opportunities. Now the slide itself. They are involved in 21 collective action covering 15 basins in 6 countries. In the US, the basins include the Colorado River and the Mississippi rivers. You can see other sites include the Mexico, Brazil, South Africa, Indian, and Indonesian islands. I am putting in the link for you to know more about this coalition, the frequently asked questions of this coalition, and take a look. And also the Pacific Institute. As I said, this is a good resource place to put into our activism. Now, although companies like these could and probably, I think they will make a difference, a very positive impact. We can't do this without the Indigenous people. We can't. RISE presented so clearly last night what their work is. It's heartfelt. And I believe our movement needs that heartfelt message. And so now, how about questions from you?
Are you done, Eileen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just, so this is where we're going to pose a couple of questions here to help start the discussion. So tell us about water issues in your home area and how could they be reframed as opportunities for building a more peaceful community. Okay, this is what we're trying to get you to think about. Rather thinking of water issues as conflict, how can we reframe them as opportunities for peace? And does your state suffer from disagreements between urban and agricultural uses of water? I know many of you do, many of your states. And how could WILPF members help bring about equitable resolutions? So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and we're going to go into the discussion period. Thank you very much. And
I'm going to call on Doyle first, but there's a quick question. Can you remind us, Eileen? I know you told us, but what does WRC stand for in that slide? It was kind of hard to.
Oh my gosh, I should have written it out. Okay, it's
okay.
the Water Resilience Coalition.
Thank you. Thank you. And Doyle, I will unmute you and let you ask your question. Let's see. Yep. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, is the number of conflict around water rising due to the fact that we have better information now, or is it really rising on its own without any change with the information? And then the second thing is, I wanted to say, to create peace, we have to create treaties around water. And I know we have the Great Lake in Michigan, and we have treaties around water in which the many provinces that are around the lake, including Canada, are joined in. And that's just like we have peace treaties, we need water treaties. So the water where we live can be respected.
Eileen, do you want to answer Odil's first question about is that better information, or they've been doing this a long time? So I think the Institute is pretty knows what's going on.
Is what
I can't provide details, but ask. I mean, I've got a big mouth for questions, and I think we all do in many ways. Just go and ask the people and anybody who you think might know something, and they will lead you to somebody else.
No,
so I do think it's not just that their data collection is better than it used to be. I do think the number of conflicts have increased, and the Middle East is, as you saw, they call it Western Asia in the UN parlance.
Oh, okay, yeah,
but it has gone up.
That is definite. When you read this report, I've been trying to put those links into the chat. I was distracted. Over the past 20 years, the number has gone up significantly, and I do believe their numbers. Although I have no idea how they went back millions of years.
Well, they found 4,500 years ago was the first conflict, and that is documented in ancient stones and things like that. Cricket, do you have a question?
No, actually, I'd like to just speak very briefly about a conflict here in the United States, here in California, that some of us know about, and it's the kind of activism where people can step in or not, but at least to know about. And this is a conflict between the city of Los Angeles and an area in the eastern Sierra called Mono Lake, and then the valley south of that. Many years, and this is really in some ways between humans and the rights of nature. Mono Lake is a major place for birds that are migrating. It has also its own indigenous bird population. It has been and the land, because there's salt in the water, when the lake dries up, it becomes a major health issue, both in the Mono Lake Valley and then further south. Los Angeles and a committee of the Mono Lake supporters many years ago signed an agreement that Los Angeles stopped taking water from Mono Lake until the lake level turned to a healthy level. And now they are trying very hard to disavow that, to start taking the water again. So it's kind of issue that most people don't even know about, and yet it has a health impact. And it also has a community impact, because to the extent that Los Angeles has been able to cut back on their own water use, they were able to stay with this particular plan for a long time, and now they're going back on it. And I think that just trying to quickly sum up of the many, many problems out there that we have, and how those involved in the places we live.
Right. And Mono Lake, has a NGO that tries to look after it, and I get requests for money from them. So the very least you can do around all these issues that we've heard about today is donate some of your money to the organizations that are trying to find the solutions to these disputes. And Mono Lake has been asking me for money for many years. So please look in your mailbox and help these organizations by giving them, $25. Thank you. I see Alan Haber.
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you. The question just before this last, bringing me back to Mono Lake and my California years, was how can these water questions and the peace question be connected? And I want to put forward, as I did in a conversation last night, that the concept of the commons could well be central to the discussion of water. Water is a commons. All the users of the commonly pooled resources need to have a say, self-management in this resource. And the commons has been demonstrated as the most efficient method of managing commonly pooled resources. It won the Nobel Prize in economics, better than the government, better than the private corporation. The governance of the commons gives a clear examples from all over the world of how, when the users are empowered in the management of the resource, things work out better. And I think it would be very beneficial if the water struggle saw commons as part of the understanding of what the struggle is about, because that has been age old, where the government or the corporations want to take the common resource, whether it's land or water or air, and privatize it for their benefit or their power. So I just want to put the word in for the commons as a common framework in all our struggles for the self-empowerment of the people using resources.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for bringing that to the fore. Philip.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank Cheryl Spencer for bringing Peter Glick into the view of WILPF. And I want to say I encourage people to reach out to the Pacific Institute. They're very, very accessible. I offered to bring a rep to the one WILPF call over a year ago, but was told thanks, but no thanks. I was in contact with the Pacific Institute. So I encourage people to reach out to them. They are very, very accessible. Thank you.
I want to thank you particularly for that, Philip. It's a shame we didn't know. I didn't know what a gem I fell upon when I came across this institute. And the respect only grows every week. Thank you so much.
And Jean, let's unmute you. You have the next question. Thank you. Yep.
I just wanted to say that I observed the parts of the Great Lakes Compact being formulated when I was in Wisconsin, where I grew up. The Great Lakes was becoming increasingly polluted, number one, and number two, the western states, which were very dry, were trying to pipe water, fresh water from the Great Lakes. So Canada and the United States along with the states that surround the Great Lakes, formulated a compact, which is an example of what Dr. Glick referred to as nation states combining a treaty, you might call it. And also it's very, it affected many indigenous tribes along the shores as well as farmers, because that region around the Great Lakes is a great agricultural area. So I just want to emphasize the compact, the Great Lakes Compact. Maybe you have some comment.
Thank you.
I don't have any comment on that. I mean, I'm hoping that, and one could argue this is a topic that overlaps Earth democracy and Disarm. That Earth democracy, you know, will be encouraging our WILPF members to take up some of these issues in their local home areas and look to making them into more of a peace building issue than a conflict issue. So that's kind of where I'm going with this this talk today. And so those of you, you know, who know about issues, I did a talk the other day in a poster about the San Francisco Bay and how there are many NGOs working on improving the San Francisco Bay, getting back its wetlands, reducing its pollution. And they do that in, you know, by working with companies. And I thought that there was 4 things that Lee Vu wrote that her organization does: litigation, legislation, citizen action, and political action. So there's kind of 4 different things organizations can do towards resolving conflicts. And amongst those, you know, citizen action, you could kind of look for collaboration rather than conflict, although you have to have litigation to get their attention in the first place.
Very good, very good. Looks like Cricket has another question or comment.
Yes. I want to remind us that we are an international organization and that we have at the international level a group called the Environmental Working Group. And we have members of that committee who are in a number of the areas that have been raised in this discussion and where people are working on or might be working on water issues. And so this is, if you're interested in the international, if you're concerned, say you have your own ties with one of these countries, or for whatever reason, the Environmental Working Group and the international part of WILPF is just such a wonderful part of who we are. And it's another way to reach out as well as in your own community or here in the United States. So look into that if you'd like to become a little more of an internationalist about water. It is the whole planet, so we need to cover it all.
So if you have a URL to that group's place on the international website or something, Cricket,
I think it was put in earlier. Maybe we can put it back in again.
Okay, thank you.
Can't remember who put it, but we have you stayed within your time limit, which is delightful. So why don't you tell people when your issue committee meets? Because I think that's another
Yes, right. So we meet twice a month because we have so many issues to be dealt with. We meet the first Sunday and the last Sunday of each month. Some months have
second Sunday
and last Sunday of each month. And we meet via Zoom. It starts at 4:30 if you're in the Pacific and 7:30 p.m. if you're in the Eastern zone, and the other people between can always work out. So we have a listserv with over 60 people on it. But by and large, I would say we have about 25 really active members and 11 campaigns currently, because we work on nuclear weapons, and we work on autonomous weapons. This is one of Eileen's specialties is drones and robots that may have AI. We don't know yet to decide who to kill. And we work on treaties. We work on improving our dealing with the media. And of course, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and the Non-Proliferation Treaty are two very big topics. I've attended both of those meetings, reviews in New York City. We send, because WILPF is allowed to send delegates to those particular meetings. Eileen, what else would you like to highlight on what we do in our committee?
I think you did well. And I think that Cricket was doing her job as alternate delegate to plug the international aspect. So I thank you for that too.
Yes,
Right.
yes, thank you all. We do have we have a little thing that we want to show you, and a little a plug from our development committee.
Hello. If you're enjoying WILPF's Congress and the chance to connect with like-minded allies, realize that offering innovative programming like this Congress is only made possible with your support. Consider leaving WILPF a tip. Please go to www.wilpfus.org and click the donate button. Choose a one-time or even better, a recurring monthly donation. We suggest a recurring donation of $10 a month to honor our upcoming 110th anniversary. Since 1915, now going on our 110th year, we've envisioned and advocated for a transformed world of peace, where justice reigns. We talk, we act, we get things done. So consider putting your money where your heart is, with peace, with justice, with WILPF. I'm Martha Collins with WILPF US Development Committee. Thank you.
We have also a request from our development committee to play a video, a very quick 1 minute video that shows encouragement and energy for WILPF International. Would you like to play that 1 minute now, or are we resuming something with the panel?
Yes, no, we're doing 1 minute and then we'll be ready for Tara. Right. Can
Wonderful.
You want me to share it? I can go find it.
I have it up if you.
Oh, you're ready? Go for it. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Can everyone hear?
Yep.
Full screen.
Women's International. Women's International. Lead for peace and freedom, USA. Women's International. Women's International. Lead for peace and freedom, USA. Peace now, freedom now, peace now, freedom now. Give now today. Give now today. Women's International. Women's International. Lead for peace and freedom, USA. Women's International. Women's International. Lead for peace and freedom, USA. Women's International. Women's International. Lead for peace and freedom, USA.
Hello, Tara.
Hello. How's it going?
Oh, we are rocking and rolling like the river. How are you?
I'm well. I am here in, as I call it, the belly of the peace, here in this nation's capital of, quote, Washington, D.C., occupied Piscataway and the Choctaw territories.
So you gave your welcome the other day, Tara. Would you tell us a little bit about who you are again for people who were not here yesterday?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, y'all. So my name's Tara Vassefi. I am originally from Iran, and I live here, as I said, in this nation's capital. And I am the branch contact for the local branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I would love to answer any and all questions, and I'll drop in the chat some things for you all to know about our local branch, which was reinvigorated just in June of 2022. But I also want to show you all where I am actually, which is this glorious vehicle known as Billy, after Billie Holiday, my spirit human. This is where I'm going to be, I guess, performing for you all inside this van, Billy the van, where she is used for furniture deliveries and, you know, different things within the community. She can also seat 15 people. And to be honest, for a little while, I was housing insecure and I lived out of Billy. So she is where I really feel very, very safe. This space is also where I feel very, very safe in women-led revolutions, with a capital E, as I like to say. So I made this challenge to myself, because I'm not much of a performer. I actually don't really like being on camera, having my picture taken. But I want to honor this Congress and this space that hopefully we can create, where women can feel safe and supported and allowed to make mistakes and be their most vulnerable selves. So I have a little song that I have prepared. I attempted to do the song during one of our test runs, and I want to give everyone a trigger warning, because I wrote this song to process the pain that I experienced as a result of a so-called revolutionary leader attempting to rape me in June of 2022. And I feel that I need to challenge myself to share this part of myself with you all and be vulnerable in this way, because I said I would do it. So here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to sing the song. If, like, during the practice run, I break down and I find out that, in fact, I'm not ready yet to complete the song, then I'm going to drop the lyrics or the words in the chat right now. And basically, that's how it will be completed. And, that's what we're going to do. Does that sound like a good plan, Tina and Dee?
It sounds perfectly exactly where you need to be, and we are here to support you. And yes, in women's revolutionary spaces. So
okay, great.
We're all right here and giving you hearts.
That's right.
Excellent.
We're dropping you've got it in the chat, so we're ready to go.
Okay, ready? And then I think it'll be easier if I'm not on camera and I can kind of, film something else. So here's my hat. And a kafaya. Okay, here it goes. Hung out, he wretches, my mission and my son. Strong arms, his mother, that's his favorite fun. Chemones, more sweat trap, honey engine, grindstone. He knows how quick his limbic patriarchy goes. Pedal to the metal, sworn steel, deal the game. Prize Benz's daughter, arrive white man sane. Dodge intimacy like therapy, cracked by the chain. Fight angry, bankrupt, warrior, and sacrifice the sane. Slow upside down, it's time for flight. Wave particles, duality of light. Climb, 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 and trust the tree. Inverting me to generation slave 3. Mama ni taught XYZ to alpha with smoother grooves. From the sisters, we watch your next moves. Take my word, beta release. The butterflies suspended sweetly while Mama Africa rise. I was falling, now I'm floating, feathered out freely, still above the sea. Life, life, life invites you to get high, transacting value, non-binary. Capitalism did its best, matriarch male of the species obsolete. Colony collapse, disorder, pollinators retreat. Embrace, embrace, embrace deeply your mother. Cure cancer there. Inspire, inspire our siblings. The safest speed is breathing in clean air. True. Is justice is love. And that, my friends, that's the pen emotion of my mission and my son. That's it. That's the end.
Woo! Terrific, complete for us all.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you.
You did wonderfully. I love hearing from our youth. Thank you so very much, Tara.
Love you all so, so much. Come visit us in the belly of the peace. I can fit 15.
Yes.
This is back to you.
You're getting a lot of hearts in the comments.
I feel it. I feel it. Love you, sisters. Thank you. Thank you for being.
I am going to say that we have our next presentation will be at 2:30, but I want to tell you a little bit about what is coming later in the day. In an hour from now, we have our poet who is going to be giving us a little bit of just another cultural break like this, a poetry break. She's wonderful. We are glad to know her. And then we have the Cuba State Sponsor of Peace program that will be coming a little bit later. I won't say the times because that gets all confusing. And Lenny Villa Gomez Reeves and Cindy Domingo will be on that. I'm just kind of reminding you because I know when George ran through the schedule, some of you weren't on, and that was early. That was hours ago. Then we have the Earth Democracy. So the true cost of PFAS contamination with a little bit of also touching base on Gaza. And then Eileen Kurkoski is going to give us the bottled or tap water presentation she referred to. And then we have some really exciting things to end the day. Moses West is going to tell us about his what we've been calling his machine. He's going to be talking about water scarcity in the future and ways to address that. And then our another highlight, navigating towards peace, overcoming the militarization and climate crisis of our oceans. Tamara Lorenz will be joining us along with Ann Wright. Those of us who have been in this work for a while know those names for the work that they do, and the respect that they have earned for putting themselves out there, being at COP, being on the front lines. And well, I'll let her tell you all the work that she's doing because it seems like she's everywhere, right? And we actually have a little bit, I know some of you have been able to catch our poster sessions. So we're going to run through like a little slideshow of our poster sessions, just so that if you haven't been able to catch them, you might want to catch them either in the Night Owl session tonight or the Early Bird session tomorrow. We have 2 books to talk about in the Early Bird session tomorrow, but you also might want to do that. And I think the slides are ready to go, so I'm gonna stop talking. No sound in case you're confused. These are just slides, so check them out. Just get to use your eyes now.
This poem was in Peace and Freedom magazine, and Mark wanted to share it with us. This is the organization that Lois Herman works with, Women's UN Reporting Network. And Lois is a member of our programming committee as well. Another Women's UN Reporting Network poster. I will put their address if you want to find out more about them in the chat.
These are the slides from the Project Enduring Peace program that we heard earlier, that some of us got to catch, about different societies who have been successful in creating systems that are non-violent. And these are the treaties that the United Nations has already passed. And that's it. How about we finish this up next time? We have a little break and let us get ready for Barbara, because I know she's ready, and we want to be able to give her and her panelists the time. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully give people a chance to get excited